What is going on, everyone? My name is Brandon Vaughn. This is the Super Kick. And more importantly, this is the first episode of Book This, where I go back and I book or rebook certain events that happen or that haven't happened yet. And the first one, I've really contemplated this for a little bit. I kind of knew that it would always be something to do with my boy CM Punk, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And then I was thinking about it yesterday at work, and I think that this is a good one. Okay, what if CM Punk main evented WrestleMania 29 in New Jersey? The main event was The Rock versus John Cena. First time ever, once in a lifetime is what they billed it at originally, and then they did it twice. Twice in a lifetime does not have the same appeal. Excuse me, what I do think has appeal, CM Punk being inserted in that match. So we started the Royal Rumble 2013, and at the Royal Rumble 2013, The Rock still beats CM Punk. And then at Elimination Chamber, The Rock still beats CM Punk. Here's where it changes, though. Okay, so CM Punk and John Cena had a banger of a match on Raw in February to determine the #1 contender for The Rock's WWE Championship at WrestleMania that year. Obviously, John Cena won that match, would go on to face The Rock and beat him at WrestleMania. In this scenario, CM Punk beats John Cena. I was going to say The Rock. CM Punk beats John Cena in this scenario, and then the match at WrestleMania is a triple threat match. CM Punk versus John Cena versus The Rock for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. So, John Cena still wins the match. At WrestleMania, John Cena wins the match, and this time, instead of Rock taking the pinfall, because he would have been the only option in the original match, CM Punk takes the pinfall. And in real life, CM Punk faced The Undertaker at that WrestleMania, and then he would take some time off to heal up a little bit and take care of some things. And the thing is, okay, so CM Punk was supposed to face did face The Undertaker at WrestleMania in real life. At WrestleMania, in my world, Daniel Bryan takes on The Undertaker. Undertaker still beats Bryan. I think there's a nice tie in there because Kane and Team Hell No. I think that does work out. So Bryan loses to Undertaker at WrestleMania. So, Punk, once again, leaves on hiatus. I don't think I'm going to change that in this world because although CM Punk did get what he wanted with the WrestleMania main event, he still could have used some time off to heal up. And ideally, in this world, we're going to keep CM Punk around longer than he was in real life. So, CM Punk takes on hiatus. That means that John Cena needs an opponent. In real life, he was taking on Ryback. Yeah, we're not going to... Ryback might be pushed in this world, but he's not going to be pushed there. And it did nothing for him. It really did nothing for him. So instead, in this match, we have a rematch from the previous year's Extreme Rules. John Cena versus Brock Lesnar, and this time Brock Lesnar wins, and he also wins the WWE Championship. We'd have to wait a year for Brock to win the WWE Championship, and he would beat John Cena, although it was at SummerSlam 2014, not Extreme Rules 2013. So, Lesnar beats John Cena at Extreme Rules. Lesnar is your new WWE Champion, becoming WWE Champion for the first time in 9 years. Brock does his usual thing, he just kind of hangs out and does his thing. Paul Heyman is on TV and talks about how he has two of the greatest, he has the two greatest wrestlers on the roster as his clients, CM Punk and Brock Lesnar. But I mean, Brock says, come on, like, I'm your favorite though, Paul, right? And Paul kind of said, well, yeah, you're Brock Lesnar. He's CM Punk, but you're Brock Lesnar. And So Brock's away, and they need a program to carry the brand, and a program that did happen in real life was John Cena and Daniel Bryan. So we're going to do John Cena and Daniel Bryan, except it's not going to be for a championship. It will be for a to become #1 contender for Brock Lesnar's WWE Championship at SummerSlam. They have a really good series of matches, and Bryan beats John Cena at Money in the Bank. And Bryan beats Cena and becomes the #1 contender for Brock Lesnar's championship. So, at SummerSlam in real life, we got CM Punk versus Brock Lesnar, and then we got I'm trying to think, what did we got for the WWE championship? John Cena and Daniel Bryan, and then Randy Orton cashed in. In this scenario, so Bryan still gets the title match, and it's against Brock Lesnar. And do you think Bryan could beat Brock Lesnar, and especially in 2013? Probably not. But he will with some interference from CM Punk. CM Punk comes out, and he didn't like it when Paul Heyman said, "Hey, well, Brock, you're really the guy." Punk kind of realized something that He doesn't need anybody else. He doesn't need it. He can make his destiny what he wants it to be. He doesn't need somebody like Paul Heyman booking his matches. Yeah, he did great for Brock Lesnar, but CM Punk's a different animal than Brock Lesnar. So, CM Punk costs Brock Lesnar the match, and Bryan becomes the new world champion. And CM Punk raises Bryan's hand at the end of the match, and Bryan doesn't look too satisfied. He's happy, obviously, because he won the title, but he doesn't look satisfied. So, Bryan the next night on Raw comes out and says, hey, you know what, I really do think that I could have done this. And in this match, Brock Lesnar he's doing Brock Lesnar things. But Bryan, you know, he's the underdog. He says, you know what, I really do think, even though it's like, guy, like, come on, you definitely would have lost that match. But he says anything could happen, and I could have won that on my own fair and square. And while I appreciate the help from CM Punk, I don't need it. And CM Punk comes out and he says, hey, he did this for you, Bryan. He did this for guys like him that have worked their tails off to get to the main roster, and he wants to be an example for wrestlers in the locker room. And he doesn't think that Brock Lesnar is a good example, because Brock Lesnar left to go in the NFL, and Brock Lesnar left to do MMA for a few years. He thinks that, and also Brock Lesnar's never there. So him and Punk going back the AEW stuff right now, the old school mentality. Punk preaches that old school mentality, and Bryan says, I really didn't need your help, but okay, sure, whatever. They, a little bit of animosity between them. CM Punk takes a couple of weeks off, and then CM Punk returns on SmackDown. And CM Punk returns at SmackDown. He calls out the Big Show and says, hey, you got Big Show, you pretty much won't accept my challenge. I'm a fighting champ. I would be a fighting champion. You're too old. Big Show says, you know what? I've beat you before, and I could beat you with one quick fist. And he says, sure, I'll accept. So main event that night, Big Show versus CM Punk for the World Heavyweight Championship. And CM Punk is your new World Heavyweight Champion. CM Punk wasn't doing too much around this time. He was doing the Paul Heyman thing and the Ryback thing. And we're going to continue the Paul Heyman feud a little bit. Punk's going to, break up with Paul Heyman. This will be a storyline that carries SmackDown through. And Punk says that he wants to be a fighting champion. And he says, you know what, I'll take out the new Paul Heyman guys. I'll take out Curtis Axel. I'll take out Ryback. And Punk defends the championship every week. And he has 3 pay-per-views. And CM Punk really gives this belt the championship reign that it deserved to be sent off with. CM Punk's a defending champion, is a fighting champion. But WWE announces that we're doing away with the 2-belt concept, much like they did in real life. The unification match in real life was John Cena versus Randy Orton. In this world, it happens at Survivor Series instead of TLC. At Survivor Series, Daniel Bryan beats CM Punk clean. It's a good match. It's a great match. I mean, every time they wrestle, it's always a great match. So, Bryan beats CM Punk just clean, straight in the ring. And then at the end of the show, Brock Lesnar returns. Brock Lesnar shows up and beats up both of these guys. Sure, we'll say that. Brock Lesnar comes out, beats up both of these guys, gets his revenge a little bit on CM Punk, and they're definitely going to be in the future. But right now, we're trying to tell a different story. Okay, so let me see what. Okay, so TLC happens. So Punk is no longer the champion. Daniel Bryan is your unified WWE World Heavyweight Champion. At TLC, Brock Lesnar is he's dominating Daniel Bryan once again for the championship. This time as a challenger, he dominates him, but Bryan this time it's a little bit different though. Bryan locks in a LeBell lock, and Brock Lesnar looks like he's about to tap out. Then all of a sudden, 3 masked men come out, and they attack Bryan, and they start beating him up, and they even give him a Shield bomb. Reminisce about the Shield, when the Shield debuted. So they give Bryan a Shield bomb. Brock Lesnar says, okay, I'm not, I definitely didn't need the help, but I'll take it. He pins Bryan with an F5, and Brock Lesnar is your new WWE champion. Bryan comes out. Bryan's not coming out the next night. Bryan is just chilling. He's just chilling for a bit. So he takes a week off, he comes out, he's all hobbled, and he says, what happened? What was the deal? That was absolutely ridiculous. Nothing like that has ever happened in my career, except when I did it when I was part of the Nexus. But this is crazy. The group comes out again, they destroy him, they give him another Shield bomb. Okay, next week, CM Punk comes out, and he says that he's here to defend Daniel Bryan. Bryan obviously isn't here because he's still trying to heal the injuries. And he wants to expose this group, and he also calls them a bunch of cowards. He says, come out and face me. And they don't come out, and Punk continues to call them cowards. It says, he and Bryan are so good, and they're such an example for this locker room, they could beat them 2-on-3. So, they can beat them 2-on-3 is what Punk says. Punk, next week on Raw, he says, you know what, I can't. We're going to make this official. I talked to Bryan. Him and I are going to take on these 3 masked men at the Royal Rumble 2-on-3 handicap match. We're so good, we can beat you. I'm going to help out my buddy, Daniel Bryan. The Royal Rumble happens, and it's Punk and Bryan versus the masked men. CM Punk, okay, so Bryan starts off, and he's wrestling with one of the masked men. They still have their masks on, and Bryan goes for the tag, and CM Punk just drops off of the apron. And CM Punk drops off the apron, the crowd knows what's up, Bryan looks like, oh my god, the group destroys him. They just ran a roughshod on Bryan and absolutely destroy him. And CM Punk, comes in. And they pin him, obviously, and they get the win. And CM Punk hops back in the ring after the end of the match and declares this group. He says, hey, gentlemen, feel free to unmask. And they unmask as Xavier Woods, Big E, and Kofi Kingston, The New Day. A year before The New Day makes their debut. They're making their debut in my world. And The New Day is here, and they are the hired guns of CM Punk. And he says, it's going to be different than it was with The Shield. These guys are the future. These guys understand the business, unlike some of these other younger guys in the locker room. Again, talking about what's happening in real life with CM Punk, because I have the power of hindsight right now. Okay, so at the end of the show, Punk and The New Day are in the Royal Rumble, and they're dominating. They're looking good, as you would expect. Number 30 hits, and in real life, Booyaka Booyaka hit, and Rey Mysterio came out to a very lukewarm reaction. This time, though, Flight of the Valkyries hits. Bryan comes out. He is looking very beat up. He's all taped up. He's kind of limping himself to the ring, but he wants to be there because he is such a fighter. Bryan comes out. Punk is, just mocking him. He's like, look what the cat dragged in. Daniel Bryan, come on. I took care of you earlier in the show. When you're showing your face here, come on. So Bryan comes in, Punk and the New Day quickly destroy him, but Punk gets distracted, he gets caught up, and what happens is Roman Reigns eliminates CM Punk, and the rest of the Shield just eliminate the New Day, and that's kind of it, and the winner of that Royal Rumble is Batista, just like in real life. We're going to keep that. So Batista versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. So on Raw the next night, CM Punk explains his actions, explains why he did this, and says that he comes out very jealous of Bryan. That's what we're trying to convey. That CM Punk's jealous of the success that Bryan has. It should have been him that became the unified champion. It wasn't. And maybe if he had some consistent help, like he does now for the New Day, he'd still be champion. And it's okay to admit that you need some help, and especially when you have guys like the New Day on your side. CM Punk beats Bryan at the Elimination Chamber. At Elimination Chamber, not, in the match, obviously, but he beats him at Elimination Chamber. CM Punk, thanks to help from the New Day. And Punk beats Bryan, and of course the New Day interfere, and the Shield comes out and evens the odds. They attack. So, we're building something between CM Punk and Bryan. Still building something between CM Punk and Bryan. And then we're also building something between the Shield and the New Day. So the bat is so blood between these two. The only way to settle it, to make sure no interference, is in a good old-fashioned steel cage match, baby. Steel cage matches aren't, they can be used for more feuds like this. I mean, a steel cage, when you think of a steel cage, you think of a blood feud. I think of a blood feud, at least, and this is what it's coming to. We're not going to resolve it in a Hell in a Cell match. It'll be a steel cage match. And at WrestleMania, first off, the New Day beats the Shield. Okay? And then Daniel Bryan beats CM Punk in just a crazy match. New Day tries to come out, maybe bang on the thing. It doesn't work, obviously. Bryan ends up winning. It's a great moment for Bryan. And in the main event, I know this isn't so great for Bryan, but again, the focus is on CM Punk here. And Bryan, we're still building Bryan. I mean, Bryan looks like a legit main eventer, and he'll probably challenge the winner of the main event, which is Batista versus Brock Lesnar. And I'm going to steal from WWE. This match turns into a triple threat match because I didn't mention this earlier, but Roman Reigns is Mr. Money in the Bank, and Roman Reigns interferes in the match, makes it a triple threat match, and Roman Reigns leaves WrestleMania 30, not 31, or I can't remember when he would leave, 32, I guess. He would leave WrestleMania 30 a year early. We started their push for Roman Reigns, and he is your due. WWE Unified World Heavyweight Champion. Maybe he debuts a new belt because this is a new era in WWE. But you still got guys like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. And I think that the plan that I did for Bryan is a lot better than originally what would have happened if CM Punk didn't leave, and that would have been him versus Sheamus. We love Sheamus now. We didn't in 2014, though. And what do I think ultimately happens to CM Punk after this? I really wanted to just book like a year or so. What I think happens is I think he ends up getting frustrated. Maybe he just lets his contract expire, doesn't sign a new contract. Maybe he does MMA, and then I don't think that he would return back to AEW if he got another couple years in WWE. But a lot of ripple effects in this. Let me know what you think of this. I've wanted to do this for so long. Like, comment, sub, share. Please share this. I'm going to be posting this a lot. Thank you so much for watching.